Hello, everybody. Well, here we are again on our True Business Stories podcast. Very much looking forward today, Mark, to interviewing Fergal Coleman. Fergal owns a company, or is a director and founder of a company called Symphony3. That was a bit of a mouthful for me. I've known Fergal for quite a while, and he and I were fairly active in the Irish Australian Chamber of Commerce. In fact, Fergal was the chair of the board when I was involved with that, and working together, we were able to set up some two amazing programs for the Irish Australian Chamber, and one was a national mentoring program for young Irish expats who had escaped Ireland during the downturn about 10 or 15 years ago, and came out to Australia as backpackers, and most of them were graduates and they got good jobs, but many of them stayed in Australia.
So welcome, Fergal.
Hi Mark, how are you? How are you, Bill?
Thanks
for having me, lads.
No, it's a pleasure, and we enjoy meeting lots of different people through our little podcast, and I'm really looking forward to this. I stalked you on LinkedIn.
Oh, very good, as we do.
As you do, and I see you responded. So how did an Irishman get to Australia is probably the question.
Yeah, look, like a lot of Irish people, I think I came out for a year to see how I'd get on, and actually I'm 20 years here this year. So came out. My wife's a Kiwi. I'd met her in Dublin. She was coming back to do some work in Melbourne, where she had a job lined up, and I said I'd come down for a year and see how I got on. And 20 years later, I've got a business and a family, and I guess roots here now, and some good friends here.
Fantastic. So what were you doing in Ireland? What was your go back? Where were you born? What happened?
Born in Dublin. So born in the foothills of the Dublin Mountains. My dad is an engineer, my mother's a teacher, look, Dublin's a great place to grow up. We probably didn't have as much money back then as people these days do, but fortunate to get a really good education. Went to university. We'll probably get into the sport. Played a lot of sport in my early days, so got a scholarship to go to university. Played a semi-professional football, national league level in Ireland, and pretty early on went out working for myself, and have learnt a few lessons along the way with successes and failures, I suppose. And the current iteration is Symphony3, which we've grown over the last 10 years from two of us that started the business. There's about 10 of us in the business now. So
good. So let's going back to Ireland. I guess when I first got involved with you and with the Irish community, it was pretty poor times in Ireland economically, and a lot of the young graduates had sort of come out to Australia and were doing the usual thing, the backpacking, working part-time, but quite a few of them actually stayed and started businesses. And I know that we'll have a podcast coming up soon with a young gentleman who has got a civil engineering company in Newcastle, and he's a typical story of what used to happen all the time. Not so much in the last 3 years when travel has been restricted. But when you were with the Irish Australian Chamber of Commerce, just tell us a bit about how that got started and how it's helped businesses. And I know they started some business awards. How has that chamber worked with that Irish kindred network, as they say?
Yeah, I mean, look, the chamber was started over 25 years ago by Jerry Higgins of Higgins Paints, and I think it started as a St. Patrick's Day lunch for a group of people around a table, and grew from there. Around the time of the GFC, I got involved. There was probably a group of us that were in our 30s and early 40s that kind of said, right, this could get a real G up. There's a lot to be done. There's a lot of people coming out from Ireland. The other probably major change that had happened is, Ireland had changed as a country from maybe when Jerry had set it up, and the type of people that were coming out and that were emigrating to Australia traditionally in the past had been a lot of probably tradies and construction people, and you still get a lot of those. You've met a few of them, but you're also getting a lot of professional services people, accountants, lawyers, entrepreneurs in the tech businesses that were coming out. And these people had lost jobs and lost businesses in Ireland and had come over here to start again. I had been benefited from mentoring myself over many years. And I thought, well, if we're going to have a business network, one of the things we need to do is help young people. Bill, you were a mentor to me, so I think I leaned on you fairly early doors. And look, we had Barry Core, who's the CEO, was the CEO then and is still the CEO. And probably a group of 5 or 6 of us that said, right, there's an opportunity to set up a mentoring program here that can help young people as they come to the country. And what we did is we went out and reached out to senior Irish people and senior Irish Australians and asked them to give their time to help one young person over the course of 6 months. And look, it was pretty successful. It's still going today. I'm not involved in it. I think you still do a little bit of mentoring. So.
Yeah, I do. I normally take on one a year.
Yeah,
we volunteer our time and it's very worthwhile, I can tell you that. And just while we're talking about business owners and mentoring, Mark, you've been doing some mentoring here under a Victorian government scheme in our region. How important is mentoring in your mind to business owners?
Well, Fergal's touched on it. Mentoring is really, really important, and especially as a sounding board. I'm finding that there's a couple of folk that I'm working with now who've got successful businesses, but they just want someone to talk to who's not within their business, not within their industry, doesn't know them all that well, that they can then say, well, what about this or what about that? And without fear or favour, you can say, well, have you thought of this? Have you thought of that? You can't tell them what to do. That's definitely not what it's about. It's about being that sounding board. And I'm at the end of some of the sessions, I think, have I really helped them? And that when they ring and say, that was fantastic, thank you, you realise you have helped, but you just haven't identified that you've helped. So it's very important.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's helped me is having not just one mentor. They're almost like business friends to a certain degree. Bill is one of them. That I can think of a handful. We've got a couple of advisors in our business, and ultimately you make the decisions in your business, but it can be lonely. And I'm in a business partnership, and I've learned a hell of a lot from my business partner as well. But just getting an independent opinion on things helps you make better decisions, I think.
Yeah, I agree. Now, we did skip over, and I just sort of wanted to head back. Your sporting prowesses. Tell us a bit about that in Ireland, and what did you do? You mentioned football. I assume, is it Gaelic football?
No, soccer, actually.
Soccer, okay.
Mind you, I played a lot of Gaelic football, so I was educated in an all-Irish speaking school, so we were very Gaelic oriented. So I played a lot of hurling and football. But soccer was probably the game we call it football, obviously, is the game that I really enjoyed. And I love soccer. Has been the world game. When I came out here, it was the first thing I did was join a football team and made friends. And I've still got fast friends from over 50 years that I've made through football. But I was fortunate enough, there was a programme in Dublin, in University College Dublin, that was a scholarship programme, which was the first of its kind in Ireland back in the day. They were obviously doing it in the States, where promising footballers were given a scholarship to get educated, but also play in the National League at the same time. So I went through that programme for 2 or 3 years. We toured Florida one summer for 2 or 3 weeks. We came out here on a tour for 3 weeks via Singapore. I played at the World Student Games, represented Ireland at the World Student Games, and then played National League football for best part of a decade, I suppose. So fantastic, you learn a lot through sport, and I guess you talk about the podcast. Sport has taught me a hell of a lot of lessons as well.
So, Fergal, are your kids into sport?
Yeah, look, I couldn't. My wife's a Kiwi, so her father has passed away. He was a great man, but he got my son into cricket very early doors. I never played cricket. It wasn't played in my part of the world really growing up. So my son's a promising cricketer, and plays a bit of basketball and footy, and my daughter's a promising netball player, and she does gymnastics as well. So. Right. So the cycle goes.
So when you graduated out of Dublin, what were your steps from there to when you got to Australia?
I like to think I've taken the scenic route, Bill, in life. When I graduated, I went down and spent a time in the west coast of Ireland in a city called Galway, which is a wonderful place if you've ever had the chance to go, and played soccer down there while also working in an IT company. So that was my first, I guess, exposure to IT. The internet was just coming on song then, and people were trying to figure out what it was all about. So I worked there for a year, and then went back to Dublin to play football on the east coast of Ireland. And I had a friend who was selling computer components, in a traditional manner, and we said, "Oh, let's try and sell these online." And we set up a business, and off we went, and did that for about 3 or 4 years. Raised a little bit of money. That was in the late 90s. So, things like getting payment facilities back in the day, couldn't get them in Ireland. So we had to go to France to get a payment facility. The security in those days was awful. It was the Wild West, essentially. But we sold stuff online. We raised a bit of money. Come 2001, we'd blown all that money, and learned some harsh lessons. It was probably the first of the harsh lessons that I learned running a business. We had to close the business down. So then I went travelling for a year, just got out, ended up in South Korea teaching English to students and business people, and then came down here and started up again, and was kind of doing a lot of consulting on my own, and then went into partnership with my current business partner eventually.
So what's your current business?
Current business is a business called Symphony3.
And the name? Where's the name come from?
Well, Symphony is obviously a music analogy. The 3 is Web 3.0, which was a buzz term, I guess, when we were starting out. But the symphony analogy is about making all your systems and your people and your technology work together, which is the challenge that every small business has today. It doesn't really matter where we go. We play in the mid-market sector. So, businesses that are 20 million to 200 million turnover generally tend to be B2B businesses. And then we do some government work as well. And every single one of those businesses have got systems with data sitting in them that don't speak to each other. So they find it really challenging to get the information they need to drive better business decisions and improve their business.
So without naming names, what's the worst case you've come across in terms of where you've helped out?
I think everybody thinks, every business thinks everybody else is doing it better, their competitors are doing it better. I think every business you go into, most of these businesses have been around for a long time. Or they've been around for 10 or 20 years. They're doing something right. And I know, because it's hard to run a business. But they'll be running some parts of the business well. And they might have an ERP. So everybody buys an ERP. They sink a lot of money into an ERP, and I think that's going to solve all their problems. But actually, they've also got a lot of their important business information is also not sitting in the ERP. So it might be sitting in a CRM system. Or it might be sitting in SharePoint or someplace, or it's sitting out in the cloud somewhere, and they can't connect up that information very easily. So they spend a lot of time trying to get data out of systems, trying to clean up the data, and then trying to present it to the business leaders to make decisions. What we do, we talk about being the smart glue for businesses. So we help them connect up all their systems and connect their data, and then connect their people to the information to make better decisions.
So with data is obviously very topical in the world at the moment, with cybersecurity and all the other issues.
Yeah.
What have you seen change? What are some of the learnings over the last few years that you think businesses need to be thinking about in terms of their data and protecting their data?
It's an ongoing thing. I don't know that it's changed, but the big change is that most stuff's out in the cloud now. I think people need to have policies in place, because often it's just not simple things like changing passwords. They just need to be mindful of it, and they need to be thinking security first all the time. Probably the major thing we see, and as I said, we're playing in the B2B space and the government space, so they tend to be behind the retail space, the B2C space, is a real realization now of how important customer experience is in a digital sense, and understanding that customers are actually the first place they're going is the mobile phone to speak to them, and they expect the service to be as good from, the $20 million business as the bank down the road. And that's the challenge that businesses have, because they don't have the same budgets.
Okay, just following on from that theme, at the moment I'm doing judging for the Geelong Business Awards, and one of my key questions is how can you guarantee that your systems are safe, and what policies do you have in regarding cyber security? Generally the one basic answer I get to that is, oh yeah, we're safe, it's all in the cloud. Well, I know that's not the right answer. So what are your thoughts about cyber security for business owners?
Look, we're not a cyber security business, so I don't want to necessarily be giving out advice. We work with cyber security organisations. It should be on the agenda of the board at all times. Number one, policies and procedures are really important. So how you set up passwords. So a lot of it's simple stuff. We've just become a partner, a network partner with the Australian Cyber Security Centre, who give out a lot of information. They ran a session last week on ransomware, for example. And a lot of it is common sense, in terms of what you do. Change your passwords. When people leave the business, take them off your systems. Make them change the passwords every 6 months, or have a policy that passwords get changed. And then, do your due diligence on your cloud providers. Look at what they do with their data. Look at where they store their data. That kind of stuff is really, really important. I don't know if that answers your question. It's
about an awareness, and we deal in the area of small to medium enterprises and family companies, and that's where I find they don't always have the best robust systems and processes in place, and they're the first ones to give me the answer I expressed before. We're safe, it's in the clouds. But there's so many examples of people who, business owners who don't understand how important it is, first of all, to have these, but more important, I think it's important to get the experts in and listen to the experts and engage the experts to set it up properly. Yeah,
and look, it depends on the size of the business. So a couple of other things that jump to mind. Audit your systems every so often if you've got the money. So our systems, we do a lot of corporate websites and customer portals where we're integrating into core systems. So they're getting penetration tested by cybersecurity companies or the big four all the time, and we welcome it. The more times our systems are tested, the better from our point of view. I've talked about procedures, a bit of training. So there are companies out there that do cybersecurity training. Pay your staff and pay the money and get your staff trained. Multi-factor authentication on systems. Where you can, use multi-factor authentication.
And it's interesting, Bill. I think the weakest link are the people.
Yeah,
and that's where it all stems from, because you can put a policy in place that says change your password once a month.
Yeah,
and people go, I'll use the same password. Nobody will know. And I remember working for a council at one stage, and every month it popped up, change your password, and you used to curse that you had to change your password, and it remembered your last password, so you had to have a new password.
Yeah,
and it had to be complex. It couldn't be password ! It had to be a bit more than that.
And I think the other thing is, if people want to hack your systems, if they can hack Microsoft, they can probably hack your business. So, have a backup plan. Yeah. Have your data backed up, your core business ready to go elsewhere if you really need to.
Another really important issue at the moment, and it's probably one of the hottest topics going around, is the availability of employees. Now, how do you handle the development work in your business, and do you find that there is a shortage in your industry of available technical experts?
Yep. We're in the tech business, so very hard to get people. We have a hybrid model, so we've got some people here and some people offshore. I think we've improved. So one of the advisors that's come into our business, Trevor, has been a great help to us. He's got it from a HR background. We hired some people last year and went through a much more rigorous process than we've gone through before, and it made a massive difference. Now, interestingly enough, we were looking for developers. We put the spec together first in terms of the position description, and then we said we're just going to go out. We're going to put it up. We use a system called Drupal. We're going to advertise on the Drupal worldwide website, and we don't care where people are from, but we're just going to see what turns up. And we've got we picked up 2 gun developers, full stack developers from that process. One's based in Poland, and the other's based in Ethiopia.
That's fantastic, isn't it?
Yeah. Now that comes with its own challenges. Trying to get a cohesive team running. We have a weekly Monday night meeting at the moment that works pretty well with the time zones. That of course will change again shortly. But trying to make those people part of the team and bring them into the team takes a bit more work, I think. But we went through the right process. What we picked up, these guys were, they're probably 40 odd. They've got 10, 12 years experience. They're self-starters. So we were able to pick those guys up at a rate we probably wouldn't get here for sure. And they're as good as what we would get in Australia. So I think you've got to think outside the box, number one, because we cannot compete with the Deloittes or the KPMGs. If they want to take our people and offer them a lot of money, they will. Probably the other point there is we treat our employees like family. So we're flexible with them. We've got a lot of hours. We've got quite a. I'm from Ireland. We've got mentioned the Poles, the Ethiopians. We've got Indians. We've got an Iranian lady. Some who are here. So Philip, who's from Kerala, will go home for December to see his family, and he'll work either side of his holidays from there.
Have you ever had them all together?
Not this particular group, but we're planning on that hopefully later in the year. Just to get them all over here.
Fantastic.
And look, I think probably the other thing that's really important is that for the 2 guys that are overseas at the moment, there's a lot of kudos for them, believe it or not, telling their friends, I'm working for a company down in Melbourne, Australia. There's an excitement around that, and we have a bit of fun. We were talking to one of the council at Broken Hill Council a while ago. And we were just explaining to the guys where Broken Hill was, and that we might get them up there and showing them the outback. And we shouldn't take this stuff for granted. So we should play on the Australian culture, and they're really quite excited with the opportunity to come out here.
That's fantastic. That's showing you've got a nimble business, that you're thinking outside the box too. Yeah,
and I think you have to. Yep. The IT sector in particular, in terms of wages and with inflation and the current economy, I think all of our employees looked for a wage rise at the end of the financial year.
All right, Fergal, I think it might be time to wind up this interesting conversation. I know we could talk for a few hours. We could you and I could tell a few stories behind the scenes.
Yeah, correct.
But it's been fantastic for you, or for us, probably more for you. And thanks for coming to our little podcast studio today. And we wish you well and your company well. And I'm sure that next time we interview you, there'll be some more stories behind the background and the success.
Well, thanks for having me, guys. And best of luck with the podcast. Great idea.